Hell yeah. Wyatt begins in like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yo, welcome to Wyatt, and I'm your host, Wyatt O'Brien Evans. Grrr, woof, goddammit, woof, 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 woof. Hey, to all my YouTubers out there, if you like what you hear, if you like what you see, just click that subscribe button at the bottom of your screen. Just click it, click it, click it. I love to click it. Yeah. Hey, today, y'all, we're going to get all caught up and swept away in the enticing, the seductive, the heart pumping, and all other kinds of thumping, if you know what I'm talking about, world of homoeroticism. More specifically, gay and same gender loving erotic comic art. Yeah. Now, well, you know, it's that sex fantasy universe that legends like Belasco and Tom of Finland have been instrumental in creating. And y'all, today's special guest is a tag team that's a legend. They have carved out their own distinctive and unique brand in this Homo Erotica universe. So they're going to be pulling up to the mic like right now. So without further ado, Wyatt welcomes the dynamic duo of class comics, Mr. Patrick Fillion and Robert Fraser. Talk at me. How the hell are you?
We're doing good.
Doing awesome.
Yeah. So we're really glad to be here. Thank you for having us. It's great to see you.
Yeah, see you.
Great to see
you. See you. Because last time I was on the show by myself and I wasn't seeing you because we were just recording. So, so it's nice to actually see you face to face.
Exactly, because I used to do audio. I'm doing visual now, and I'm so glad I'm doing that. Yeah. And I want to thank you guys for stopping by, Wyatt. And first off, I have to congratulate you guys on the 20th anniversary of Class Comics.
Thank you.
How the hell does that make you feel?
Well, pretty good. I mean, it sort of snuck up on us, really.
Yeah. Sometimes it makes us feel old.
Sometimes it makes us feel old. It's true. But what's kind of cool is Class Comics turns 20 as we turn 20 as a couple. So we've been together personally for 20 years, and we realized that as we celebrate our 20th anniversary personally, it's also the date of when we sort of got together to start the company together. So, so it's kind of a double whammy in a way.
In so many ways, we really work, we bounce everything off each other in such a way that when we met, I kind of said, you know what, I think you/we can make something bigger, and we can really make a real comic company out of what you do.
Yeah, because I was doing comics at the time. So when we met, he said, "Oh, this is really cool," and I had my skill set, but he was approaching it with a whole other skill set, and he's very creative in his own right, but he also has a lot of business savvy and that kind of background, and so we just thought, hey, let's throw this all together and see where it goes. And so 20 years later, here we still are.
Well, you know what? That is so great. I'm going to dig into you guys as a couple a little bit later and definitely dig really deep into everything Class Comics. And I want to tell the audience, first of all, that I'm so impressed with your publications. They have a particular verve, a particular vibe. It's got that swagger, that flavor. And let me just say this, Class Comics isn't a class by itself.
Oh, thank you.
but I just made a pun.
You did, and I love it.
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Can we use
yes,
that?
yes.
Yeah.
Fraser. First of all, Fraser, did you pick that up?
I
I
did.
made a pun.
I liked it.
Patrick, did you pick it up?
I
I made a
did,
pun.
but I thought I'm just going to let him go with it because this is going someplace great. So
Well, listen, I roll like that.
I know it's true.
Okay, so again, Patrick, you're more on the creative end as being principal writer and artist, and Fraser, you're more on the business end. Let me ask this. I'm really curious about this. Do you guys ever have like a disagreement about something? And if you do, how do you resolve it?
Oh, well, we have disagreements about things fairly often.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think you can run a company together without, having opposing viewpoints every so often. And I
Right.
think that that's a really healthy thing, because if you kind of just walk into a situation and just capitulate to every discussion, it becomes kind of flat and not very dynamic or creative. So, often I'll throw out an idea and then he'll counter with something, and we'll kind of work around that until we come to a really good place, well, what we feel is a really good place, and go from
Yeah.
there.
I don't think we actually we don't have arguments terribly often, but there's a ton of back and forth, and quite often, whether it's about a plot line or something he's illustrated or something that someone sent to us, we can have different points of view on to whether it's perfect, whether it needs to be elevated, whether it needs to be changed, and it can take a few conversations to get to somewhere. But in a typical kind of company, that's a conversation in like a meeting or by email, etc. But with us, it can be a conversation which starts off by because we text from our different offices a lot. So we might be texting to each other about something, and then at lunch we'll talk about something else, and then brushing our teeth in the evening, we'll finish the conversation up. So it's a different way of doing it.
I love it. You guys are definitely in sync, and I like that. Okay, before we do a deep dive into class comics, and I'm going to be asking you some other questions about you being a couple, let's travel through the corridors of time so we can get your backstories. So, Fraser, where were you born and raised?
I was born in Sudbury, Ontario, actually. So it's a northern town in Sudbury, up in to the east in Canada. I'm not sure how good your geography is, but
Not good. Not good.
Go to Toronto and up.
Head on up.
Yeah. So that's where I.
That helps a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, Patrick, what about you?
Well, I was born in Quebec, in a small town called Matane, and so I was born in a French-speaking environment. And when I was, I think, 6 or so, my parents decided to move out to British Columbia for a whole change of work and lifestyle, and so I kind of was dropped into an Anglophone environment, and I had to pick up the language from there. And I grew up in a smaller English-speaking community, nevertheless. But it was learning English trial by fire, because I knew maybe the words yes and no, and that was it when I arrived. So I
think what's interesting though is that we actually really come from very similar cities, just on different sides of the country. That Prince George is
they're
it's a northern town, and so is Sudbury. Sudbury used to be a mining town, and Prince George
logging.
Logging.
Yeah,
so,
logging is the big industry. So it is interesting that we can relate a lot on that sort of small town boy kind of level. And so that we often find ourselves comparing notes sometimes. It's just kind of something that happens.
Different cities, same story.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay, now, this is the question I really love asking my special guests, and here it is. what were rather Fraser and Patrick like as little boys, as little nippers? Give us three characteristics that best, or qualities that best describe you. And I'm going to Fraser first.
Well, is it any surprise, from a comic book making couple or individual that geeky had to be the number one, descriptor? Of course, I was. I don't speak for you,
I
but
was too. Yeah.
a bit of a nerd at heart, where book loving and just always in my nose in a book. I remember once in class, and I loved reading time in class, that teachers would say, okay, it's half an hour now, you have to read a book, and everyone would be like, oh, and I'd be like, okay, which one? That once I remember being so buried in the book that all I could hear was, or I suddenly heard not my name being called, but my name being called repeatedly and forcefully, and it just jolted me out, and I was like, oh, I guess it's time to stop reading. So book loving geek. And ironically, the other thing though is I was very much outdoorsy. I was at summer camp, and I loved the backyard and being in the woods, etc. So a bit of a juxtaposition, but that was me as a kid.
He's into nature. I think nature is beautiful on TV. So, we have...
Me and you both. Yeah. Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, not for me. So
yes.
That's a big difference.
For sure.
Yes, I totally get it. I didn't like camping. Yeah, no. Okay,
but
Patrick, three qualities.
Yeah. Three qualities. Okay. Well, now I'm trying to remember the ones I said last time I was on the show. Let's see if I'm close. So I think inquisitive, very curious about stuff. I also, this might be new from last time, but I'm going to say maybe willful, not in the, disobeying the parents kind of way, but just I wanted to know things about the world. I wanted to have a sense of how things worked. And so I was going to get my answers and find out.
Blunt.
Yeah, no matter what it took, essentially. So even if parents were saying, no, you can't do that, I would always try to find a way around it. So, because I wanted to know, and I don't know, just I was pretty quiet. I mean, I still kind of am. I'm a very solitary person.
Okay.
And I was as a kid too. I liked being, buried up to my eyebrows in comic books and cartoons, all that stuff. And I just loved letting my imagination, take me away, right? So
I think we're both technically introverts.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't know if that...
Okay. No, that gives us a picture of who you are.
That's cool.
I love it. Okay, let's fast forward. I'm going to use my cheat cards. See, these are very important.
Yeah.
See, they're very important. Okay, here we go. Okay, now this is for you, Patrick. I believe you said last time when you moved to Vancouver, Canada after high school, you experienced an evolution that put you firmly on your path as a fully self-aware artist. Let's unpack that.
Well, I think arriving in Vancouver and discovering the gay community, for example, and places like Little Sisters bookstore, for example, was somewhere that meant a lot to me when I first arrived, because they had books on, being gay and what that meant, and also collections of art by Thomas Finland, by Acquaintance, by all these wonderful artists that I had never really been exposed to in, my earlier life before moving out to Vancouver. So that was this almost epiphany that it's like, whoa, like all this stuff that I've had inside me that I've sort of thought I really want to delve into, but I'm, am I right in feeling this way, or, having all those questions were suddenly just dispelled, and basically I got my answer. Others have done it and you can do it too, and just do it to the best of your extent. And I think that that's what really stimulated my growth, is that that exposure to the art community, the gay art community, and everyone that had come before me. So that was huge for me.
Oh, I can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Fraser and Patrick, would you allow me to be Mr. Nosy?
Sure.
I don't think anything can stop you.
We're a captive audience.
That's right. See, that's why I like you guys so much.
Yeah.
Well, one of the reasons anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, now here it is. I mean, how did you guys meet and fall in LUV love?
Oh.
Let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. You want to do this one?
I think I can start that one off because we met through basically a work friend of mine. And before I made naughty comic books, I was actually in the financial sector, in insurance and banking. So I worked for a very, very, well, let's just say it wasn't a creative place with not a lot of naughty stuff happening that I know about, at least. But a good friend of mine, well, I shouldn't say, so he was a friend who basically latched on to me as the cool gay guy who was a little bit under the radar, but still kind of, he thought was neat. He said, you know what? I have a, I guess, cousin or a gay friend.
Yeah.
I should set you up.
It turns out that, so this friend of his is someone I'm actually related to through my brother. Oh. So, and his wedding, or his marriage. So essentially I'd gotten to know him separately, and he, was sort of testing the waters a little bit with both of us. And he was like, well, I've got this friend at work, and his name is Fraser, and he's super cool. Like he's totally geeky and into like the stuff that you really seem to like. Could I give you, his number, or would you like him to call you? And if I can be so bold, I was like, well, I've just come out of like a bunch of crap with other dudes, and that makes me sound really slutty. That's not it. But all I mean to say is I'd had like some unfavorable experiences, and I said, well, as long as
I feel you.
Yeah. So I said, if he calls, I'll take the call.
Thanks. You'll schedule me in.
Yeah.
Well.
Yes, I know.
Well. Try to play a little hard to get here. Well.
Yeah.
Patrick, I didn't know that about you.
Yes.
Listen, this whole visual thing is making me learn more about you.
I
love it.
I
should have started visual a long time ago.
Well, here we are now.
And I was full of bravado. I just said, oh, yeah, give me his number. No problem. I'll call him. Yeah. And meanwhile, in my head, I was thinking, oh, geez, what have I done? This is not going to work out. And now I'll lose this work friend because it's going to go off the rails. But it didn't. No.
But what did happen is during that time, prior to him calling me, my grandmother had actually passed. So when he phoned, I said to him, listen, I'd love to chat, but this is kind of a bad time. So could we call each other again? I said, how about I call you back? So then I call him back about a week later, and he's watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And he says to me, and I quote, can I call you back in about 30 minutes because I'm just watching Buffy?
I'm watching TV.
I know, but he said specifically, I'm watching Buffy. And had it been like, had he said I'm watching hockey, I would have been like, ugh. But because he said I'm watching Buffy, I'm like, oh, this is someone after my own heart.
Oh,
I was kind of smitten.
Oh,
yeah. So
listen, as Michael Jackson would say, "Oh, Tito, give me a tissue."
Right? So it was kind of, I don't know, predestined almost, because when we finally did get together and go for, that initial meeting, I already kind of liked that about him, that he was honest enough to say, well, I'm kind of doing this, but also that he was into the kind of stuff I was into, because I love Buffy. So it was just kind of a neat.
Yeah. We had a lot in common. Yeah. Just to kick things off nicely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so much of
Oh,
that
so
shows
when
up
did
in our comics now.
Yeah.
You know, we're always, readers will never know how much of our personal life ends up in comics.
Mhm.
It is in little panels, it's in conversations, it's in,
We should
genres.
maybe specify what ends up in the comics, but yeah.
now Mr. Nosy wants to know, one, when was the first kiss? Two, who initiated it? And three, when did you both say to yourselves, this is the guy? This is, this is the
Geez.
guy.
Well, I'm gonna jump in, not with the first kiss, because I hope you remember it. But I was the first one to say I love you, and
okay.
it was very quick, and he was a bit shocked.
I was,
and I didn't even know what I'd said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just like, what in the hell is going on? This is coming out of nowhere, and sometimes you have feelings and things inside of you, but you haven't quite yet sorted through them all. So you don't really know exactly what they mean. So when he blurted this out, I was just like, oh, cannot compute. What's happening?
And the reason is it's because he is a native French speaker and I speak French immersion French. So my grasp of the language wasn't isn't as, just isn't as good as his. So I ended up saying something which I thought was, I like you.
In French. We need to specify. Because he said, je t'aime. But in French, when you say je t'aime, it can also mean like I like you. So it's all in the sort of delivery, if you will.
Right.
But,
got it.
Yeah. Let's just say that when he delivered it,
maybe too heartfelt.
It could have been taken any number of ways. So that's why I think I kind of went into that whole.
I saw him reeling. I thought, I don't know, what did I just say? What did I do? Anyway, so what was our first kiss?
Well, I'm a little bit ashamed to say I don't think I quite remember the first kiss. I think there was one when we were out buying toothpaste.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Terrible.
I think so, but it was 20 years ago. I mean, look at all this gray. I mean, I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday. So,
well,
excuses. But
well, Mr. Nosy had to ask.
He did, and I wish we could have answered better.
He got an honest answer.
Yeah, he got an honest answer.
Yeah. There was no social media then. It wasn't posted to Facebook and Twitter
or on Instagram or anything.
Yeah.
Well, what are two things that you most like about each other?
Who goes first?
It doesn't matter.
You want to go first? Or shall I go first?
You can go first.
Okay. Well, he always makes me laugh. And he's really just, I'm high strung. I admit that fully. I'm a creative type, right? So I get into my head and I spin things sometimes out of control much too quickly. He is not like that at all. He's Mr. Cool as a cucumber all the time. And if I'm like having a total, spaz out, he has this, you have this ability to sort of, no, he does. He totally has this way of just calming me down. It's like,
that's great.
The sun's getting real low and I totally just calm down. So that's one of the things I love about him. And just how smart he is. I mean, it's, I can't explain. I mean, I don't think I'm a stupid person, but I am not as smart sometimes, like just in terms of life smart and business smart. Like he is so instant and he comes up with things on the fly that just, it's very impressive to me.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. But you know this, I've told you this. Yeah.
And about Patrick, what I love about him is just how much I get in trouble because of all the reasons he just said. He almost plays the devil's advocate without realizing it, just because the first thing out of his head is it must be even the thing before he thinks. It's just bam, his mouth is open, and what he thinks, he's honest and truthful about everything that is asked.
I'm
or put
hoping
out.
that's good sometimes.
It's good most of the time, and it got us here. So yeah. But you know what? He when I need to be put in my place, I'm there, and when we're just being ourselves, we're always having fun. You know, we mutually respect each other, and whatever happens a day or two later, we never go to bed angry. So that's good.
Oh, that is so important. Okay, getting a little bit serious. Mr. Nosy has one more question, and then he will exit the building.
Oh.
And here it is. Here it is. You've been together for 20 years. When you really think about it, that is so unusual in the gay, same gender loving community. It really, really is. So I've got to commend you for it because, you know, I believe in love, relationships, all of that. So what is the secret sauce that you guys have you're nurturing, you know, you're supporting each other, you're furthering the relationship. What's the secret sauce? And communication, I'm pretty sure effective, open, honest communication is one of the ingredients in that sauce.
Sure, I'll kind of kick off on that one. I in some ways attribute two things. We both have these odd families where both our original parents are still together, and the grandparents were, and we seem to come from this kind of role model of just happy families, which is kind of odd nowadays. And then obviously, secondly, just working together has kept us always communicating. But I don't know if it sounds terrible to say this, but you know, we have moments of like, well, what if we broke up? Can you imagine? You know,
it's almost inconceivable. It's very strange. It's like I've never been more certain about anything in my life, and I think that to sort of just pick up a little bit on what you were saying, a lot of people have asked us this question, and my immediate
I'm sure
answer is that we always come from a place of respect and kindness. So even when we're upset about something, we don't yell at each other, we don't call each other names, we don't like demean each other. We communicate about it like grown adults. And it sounds trivial maybe, but I think that a lot of relationships I've observed, and I'm not saying, oh, look at us, we're so perfect. That's not it, because I think every relationship has room to grow and to better itself. But my feeling is that a lot of relationships, sometimes people get carried away with the anger or the bitterness or the whatever other kind of negative emotions might be on the surface. Whereas I will be the first to say I get angry sometimes, but I try to go, yes, but if I start spewing venom, what does that get? Nothing. It hurts him and it hurts me and it hurts us. So it really is about, you know, just remaining kind, communicating, and coming from that place of respect. It is so important, I feel, personally.
It's also really hard to cheat when you live and work together, because what are you going to say? I'm off to a lunchtime meeting with who? Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, we're very strange in that we're literally together 24/7. I think a really weird thing happened recently where I had to go to a physio because I hurt my shoulder. So I was going to a physio appointment, but nothing serious. But it was just kind of funny because it's like, this is so strange. I'm out of the house without Fraser. Like, bizarre.
Yeah.
We're so like we're so used now to being together and in sync all the time. It's just part of who we've become. So,
that's true.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's great. And, you know, really quickly about spewing venom, once you say stuff, you can't take it back.
That's right.
You really can't take it back. And I see, you know, I'm so glad to have you on for a number of reasons. And I really wanted to get into the, you know, your personal relationship because you guys are truly in love with one another. I mean, it's there. It's like a bright light, and I'm not being whatever. It truly, truly is.
Thank you.
And thank you for giving my audience some tips on being kind to each other and making a relationship work.
Well, like I said, it works for us. So I have to think it might be effective for others too. So
yeah, start a business together.
There you go.
Well, speaking of business, we're going to do a deep dive into Class Comics. And let me say this first. My audience. Let me tell you something. Class Comics is a gourmet feast for the eyes and the loins. It really, really is. And what I love so much about you guys is that you put diversity in the forefront. You've got Black characters in the forefront, Asian. And that's the perfect segue for me to talk about Mr. Isaiah Shade, the main character in Gay for Slay, because you see, that's what turned me on to Class Comics.
That's so cool.
Mr. Isaiah Shade. I mean, he's Black, he's built, he's just he's all of that. So let's talk about that first.
What would you like to know?
Everything you want to tell me, because I'm getting kind of hot because of Isaiah Shade.
Yeah.
Listen, I wish I could turn him into a real person, but that's neither here nor there. Tell us about Gay for Slay.
Well, Gay for Slay is it's funny how sometimes characters start in the most unexpected ways. So I think around 2016, I had in my head that I was going to do a Halloween themed comic, and it would be a series of short stories, and each one would feature a new character that had never been seen before. And then it would just be like, because we love horror, so I thought we're going to do like a sort of horror erotica without getting too extreme horror, but just have like the hauntings and that kind of thing. So Isaiah was one of the main characters in a story called The Devil on the Shelf. And essentially in this story, you have this, he's married to a woman at the beginning of this, but clearly you can tell that he's, I don't want to say questioning quite yet, because he's not really aware of everything that's happening within him, but he's got inklings. So this devil is on the shelf. His wife brings this home, and it's this little Halloween decoration. And when she leaves and Isaiah is alone with this little devil, well, the devil comes to life and basically says, "Ooh, you and I, we're going to have some fun."
Lures him.
Yeah. So, and that was to be it initially, and it was just, some sexy, raunchy Halloween fun, and that was what it was going to be. Except that when we finished with that book, and we printed the book, we released it, and we put it aside, I couldn't stop thinking about Isaiah. There was something about him that stood above all of the other characters that I had come up with for that series. And I just sort of thought, I want to know where he's going to take me. I want to see what else he has to show.
Okay.
There's also something interesting about that one story too, in that Patrick went into that whole project with a goal of being freer with his pen.
Yeah.
That Patrick can be laborious on his art. He will refine it and have meticulous inks, meticulous colors. Really, really. Well, he kind of just like swims in it. But with that story, we wanted him to just be able to put it out and to work freely and loosely.
It was a different art style.
Yeah,
I think you're getting at.
But it also, I think, let your head just put something there without thinking about it too hard and without too much planning.
I remember working on it. So it was called Jacko's Horny Halloween Tales. So we have this jack-o'-lantern character who is, he pops up every Halloween, and he's very randy, and but he's a lot of fun, and the fans really like him because when Jacko is around, stuff gets crazy. You don't know who's going to pop into the stories. So I really wanted to work with that character and see what else I could, bring up in that narrative. But I was doing a different art style. It was very sketchy. It was very quick. And I literally felt like I was on fire doing this book. I think I hammered it out within maybe a month and a half. Like it was just bam, bam, bam.
Whoa.
Yeah, I had so much fun. And I knew that approaching something that was kind of also horror themed was going to be a real thrill for me because I've loved horror ever since I was a little kid, and I've always wanted to work with it in comics, but I never wanted it to get, so far into the horror genre that it would turn people off too, right? So
the title, I think, was the turning point for you. I think you came up with the title before you came up with the complete storyline. Gay for Slay was just something which made it happen.
So, Isaiah had to come back. I felt this urgent need to explore this character more. And the more I did, the more I fell in love with him because of all the characters I've created, and I've created a lot in my 40-some years, he is, I would say, one of the most fleshed out, well-rounded, to my opinion anyway.
I agree.
Very individual. He's questioning a lot about his own sexuality, especially now I've done up to issue 3 of Gay for Slay, and we're discovering so much about him and his journey as a man who also enjoys other men, and he never really realized that he did that at first. He just kind of thought, well, I'm getting married to a woman, and so that's how it is. But then his whole, I guess, path has led him somewhere completely unexpected. And I love fleshing that out. Sorry, that was long.
Well, let me just... No. That was very thorough, and I really appreciate that. But let me say that, he should have come to my house, and I would have taught him everything he needed to know.
You would have saved him so much trouble. I mean, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is your house possessed?
Patrick?
Yeah.
Maybe if you have a need, show up.
Patrick, Fraser, I could have done all of that. No problem at all.
I have no doubt.
Okay, so now you've got 2 other titles I want to talk about. The first is Ride Hard, and My Boyfriend is a Superhero.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Well, we can talk about, we'll let you in on M-Bias.
Yeah, we call it M-Bias for short because my boyfriend's a superhero.
I love it.
It's a little bit of a mouthful.
It's a mouthful.
We can refer to it as M-Bias.
Yeah. So,
and it's fun because we can also talk about both of us in it. Where you'll maybe tell a little secret on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, please do. Please.
Like
just spill. Come on.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So I think what he's referring to is that we're always trying to be a few issues ahead. So My Boyfriend is a Superhero #1 came out just, I think, maybe a month and a half ago or so. So, but #2 is already headed off to the printers, but #3 is in the works. And one morning I went upstairs and made a coffee, and I turned to him and I said, how would you like to write an episode in M-Bias #3? Because the idea of M-Bias is that it's a 24-page comic, each issue, but there are 2 12-page stories. So I said, would you like to do an episode? And what's kind of fun is we treat it a bit like a television series. So, each episode is its own kind of unique thing. And I pitched that to him, and he came up with a fabulous story.
Well, yeah. So we've said I focus on the business and the website and our development of this and how we can do more and better, etc. But quite a while ago, he said to me, well, are you ever going to make a comic? And in the middle of running Class Comics, I also thought, yeah, I really should do that, to have the full experience. So I have a few comics under my belt, but we hadn't really worked on one shared title until this.
Yeah, so. I think to be even more precise, I think we hadn't worked on a title that involved characters that I had created.
That's true.
All several years back. And so that he was sort of then taking and writing an episode for and giving, them the voice that they're supposed to have, but in his own words.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's how that came about.
It's hard to, or it can be tricky to write someone else's characters. And I mentioned earlier how a lot of our personal lives ends up in our comics, and you'd never know it reading it. And it's an example. So it's called The Invasion, and it has to do with Felix and Byron have company over, which is their family. And it doesn't sound like the roots of a great story. But,
no, but it's because at its heart, M. Bias is a slice of life comic. Yeah. So it's you have Felix, who is Naked Justice, and you have Byron, who is Space Cadet. So that's their superhero alter egos. But during the day, they're just regular guys. They're trying to earn a living. They're trying to, navigate familial issues and so forth. And that's what we focus on in this. It's not so much about, hey, I can shoot laser beams through, my eyeballs or anything like that. It's literally your parents need to crash at our place for about a month. And how the heck are we going to survive this?
What's the impact on their relationship?
Yeah. And it has been so much fun developing a series that is kind of using stuff that we've gone through a little bit, but kind of working on that to embellishing it to be comic book worthy, I guess. So that's kind of where all that came about. And the artist who illustrates M. Bias is Alexander, and he is so brilliant. He's so brilliant. And
I can tell.
Yeah, and I love working with him. And I said to Fraser, when he wrote the story, I said, now get ready, because you're in for a treat. Because when Alexander illustrates something, it's like a bundle of joy in your in tray every time he sends an email with some updates. So, and it has been so much fun so far.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
With so much detail, and in some ways, I don't know if it's almost like Where's Waldo, in that you just keep looking and seeing more and more, looking for details, or, I guess as the writer, you know how much he's embellished and added, but as a reader, you're just enjoying it. So anyway, it is weird because that is literally 2 comics in the future. We've released the one, and in my head that came out 6 months to a year ago, but it just came out a month and a half ago. So often in our life where, whether it's seasonal, like Halloween to us happens around August because we have to think about Halloween that much earlier. When Halloween comes and we're like, didn't this already happen?
Like I imagine that a lot of companies that have to deal with preparing something for a specific time of year go through that as well. There's some displacement going on because I have to get into the Halloween mindset, like Fraser says, in the middle of summer. It's totally bonkers, but it's just part of it, and I, since I love Halloween, I'm kind of like, well, it gets to come early, so I'm okay with that.
That is good.
But what's cool also about My Boyfriend is a Superhero is I mentioned that it's illustrated by Alexander, and earlier you mentioned wanting to talk about Ride Hard, which is written and illustrated by Alexander. And that's how we met him initially, and how we first were introduced to his work was with the Ride Hard series.
Yeah.
And Ride Hard was a title, I can't believe it already, but 10 years ago, we released the first issue.
Yeah.
And people loved it. He only did 3. He did a solid full 3 story arc. But it's been out of print for several years, and people keep asking, like, when is Ride Hard going to come back? Are you bringing Ride Hard back? And finally we said, you know what? This is our 20th anniversary. Why don't we celebrate something that was hugely meaningful to our company? And let's bring Ride Hard back as a trade paperback. So we collected all 3 of the issues, and it's a beautiful collection, and that comes out well
next week.
Yes.
Maybe same time as a podcast.
Yeah, as our podcast. So
yeah. Also, Alexander is such a humble creator. I remember he sent us the first issue of Ride Hard, all together, all complete, all done, and he said, "Would you guys be interested in publishing this?"
And we were like, we'd have to be stupid not to. So,
Yeah.
But we're
Absolutely.
negotiating at first, right? But over the years, we've just, I mean, it's the same with a lot of artists we work with, like David Cantero, for example,
Butch
McLogic, Logan. There's a lot of people we've worked with that you kind of develop this. It goes beyond a work relationship, I think, at some point, because you're all creating something. You're all just, like having fun in a creative way. So you become friends, and you do share more about your life together. And I think that creates a very kind of intimate working relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something I absolutely value with people like Alexander, with David Cantero, with Butch, with all these people, because I like the idea that we can approach it without ego, without no one's a jerk, no one is, well, I did it this way and that's how it's going to stay. Everyone is open to the creative process. And often, I mean, we have artists right back, like, for example, with David Cantero, who I work on The Brigade with. I write The Brigade and he illustrates. I tend to put so much into The Brigade, and he'll write me an email and say, okay, Patrick, you're kind of going off the rails a little bit. Like, we have 24 pages, not 160. So, it's good, like, to rein me in a little bit. And then I'm like, okay, I will do a second draft. And and I love that. I love that you keep each other on your toes, So yeah.
I think though, I'm pushing it out to other companies and so on, but we are truly a creator-owned company.
Yeah.
So we know what it's like to make a comic. We know the time it takes. We know the blood, sweat, and tears that go into it. So, and we do it ourselves. So we understand the creators, I think, intrinsically. When that might not happen with all publication companies, where might be just sort of there are business people running it who don't get that depth of soul that goes into every creation.
And there has to be a cohesive voice. So going back to what you were saying earlier about Isaiah and how you just find he's all that. And I think that part of why that happens is because it isn't a new creative team every issue. It's always this, like, in Isaiah's case with Gay for Slay, it's always me who's writing, it's always me who's illustrating. But if you look at when I bring in someone like Fraser for My Boyfriend is a Superhero, and Alexander, we've asked Alexander if he'd like to write an episode in an upcoming issue, and he's wholeheartedly agreed. So only people that have an understanding of the characters, I find, and really, and I'm not saying that people for the big publishing companies that take over a big popular book don't have an understanding. But I think as long as you respect the vision that's come before and you build on it, rather than go, oh, well, that's nice, but this is the direction I want to go in, and change, and retcon and whatever have you, that's important to me, that people remain on focus, basically.
That makes so much sense, Patrick and Fraser, because the audience is used to a certain thing. They're used to the character being, at his core being a certain way.
Yeah.
So, having the same team to do that is really important. I want to ask you this. Okay. You have said that often when people buy a Class Comics title, they're expecting a sex comic. But they're pleasantly shocked and surprised to discover that there is much more to that, much more to it. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Fooled you. Yep, that's kind of our goal for them. Buy the comic because of the big penis, and then discover the story just has you turning the page and turning the page. So,
yeah. I actually, one of my favorite things as a creative artist, writer, is when I get a letter from someone that says, Dear Patrick, I bought your comic thinking that it was going to be great inspiration, let's say, to enjoy. But imagine my surprise when I discovered that I was into the story, as much, if not more, than the sexual kind of aspects. And don't get me wrong, because I love drawing, men. I love drawing male, interaction and sexual interaction. I love doing that. And it's at the core of our company. It's a huge deal for, what we do.
Yeah.
But I love surprising people. I think he does too. And by surprising, when somebody says to me, holy cow, I didn't know I needed to read this until I read it. So Isaiah's journey and his self-discovery and trying to figure out what it means to him as someone who thought he was probably straight, to suddenly realize I have an attraction towards my own gender. That's not something people expect to see in what they first imagine is strictly a sexual comic. But I love to say that Class Comics is not just about sex. You're going to get characters that are endearing. They're going to grow on you, or you'll want to come back to see what they're up to, what they're doing, and you'll also you'll get the fun parts, the libido parts are there. But it's important to us that the art be on point, the actual publications themselves, that they be beautifully printed, that that we're not just not just running some crap show. So
we've actually had discussions about imagine producing one of our comics or one of our series without any sex in it. Imagine we were able to modify enough panels and storyline to get it into not G-rated, a mature publication, or what's less than adult.
Well, I mean, let's say, I don't know if Vertigo still exists for DC or
exactly.
Marvel Knights or whatever. But I think what's kind of cool is if, let's say you took Isaiah, you took out all the nudity, all the actual sexual content, and let's say you replaced it with innuendo or, and clothed him the whole way through. Because Isaiah doesn't wear much ever, because that's, so you'd have to dress him a little bit.
Yeah.
But I dare say I think the series could still work as something that is, maybe PG and off you go. And that's really important to me, because that sort of says you don't just do a comic with sex in it, you do a comic that has story, but also has sex.
Yeah.
Well, you're absolutely correct, because I'll be serious for a second here, or maybe two or three. Class Comics really is a class act, because you've got, even as an author, I know that if you're writing erotica, you need to have a story. You need to have a foundation. It's got to be a strong story with an engaging plot. And your publications do that. You've got the wonderful erotic eye candy, but you got that strong, compelling story, those plot lines. And when I'm reading it, when I first read Gay for Slay, of course, Isaiah being full nude, that hit me in the head in a very positive way. But when I stop it, Patrick. But when I started to stop, but when I started to really read it, I was really lost in the writing, in the story, in the plot, and at some points, the graphic art, the erotic art became secondary to me.
I love that.
But, success.
It did.
I truly love that. I find writing Isaiah is a very intimate experience because,
Oh, I'm sure.
but all kidding aside, if you take the sexual connotation away, it's intimate in a sense that I take a lot of parts of my soul, my experience, to put into his thoughts. Because one of the things I love is that in Gay for Slay, you can have these big sex sequences and people are getting it on and it's, really hardcore. And here you have Isaiah musing about life and what this represents to him and how he never expected this. And people often tell me, like, this is such a cool kind of like juxtaposition that you can have that sort of, carnal side, and yet you can still be a fully realized human. Like, you don't have to just debase yourself to have that experience. And I love being able to do that. It's very intimate, but it's also very just raw. It's, he is in the moment all the time. And that's why sometimes he has these moments of bewilderment too, wouldn't you say, where he's sort of just, oh my God, I just realized this. And the reader's realizing it with him. I mean, I could go on and on about this forever, but it's just, yeah.
Well, let me ask you, gentlemen, what do you have planned for the rest of the year going into 2023?
Wow.
Whoa, 2023. Yeah.
We'll start with 2022
Yeah,
first.
let's finish off 2022. The way the world is going, we can only take one calendar year at a time.
One day at a time.
Yeah. Well, we have some fun new releases coming out, as we've already leaked a few of them. But we also have, actually, I don't want to say that. We have some other fun things coming up. Well, as we've said, part of our 20-year anniversary is we wanted to kind of do a year unlike the other ones we've had in the past. So we have some, offbeat publications coming up, and also some contests that
nice.
with our readers. So, and they're unique to an anniversary, let's say. So.
What's also kind of cool is we've talked about redoing our website, for example. We want to, because websites are one of those things that they get old really quickly. And, the technology is always turning around and yada, yada, yada. So one of the things we want to do is just kind of snap it up a little bit. And that's something he's excellent at. But I love that kind of thing. I always like, how else can we present our stuff, We've got that. We've a ton of other books. We can't. Some things we can't say because it's not completed yet. But we have a revisitation of a publication which isn't Ride Hard, which goes back to perhaps one of our first publications from another creator. I think 2000 and maybe 2004 is how it dates back to then. But we know that people are going to be thrilled about this. People have been asking about this sort of thing for so long.
Why, it's like, can you please tell me?
I know, but we don't want to reveal.
Tell me. Tell me.
But you're very convincing.
That's okay, because you'll be back anyway. So I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, when it comes out.
Listen, I want the exclusive. So I want you to, when you are able to, tell me. But anyway, how can us grown folk follow you, connect with you? Give us your social media.
Sure thing. We are on Facebook as Class Comics. Easy to remember. Twitter as Class Comics, and Instagram as Class Comics Inc. Yeah. Patrick is also...
I'm on Facebook under Art of Patrick Fillion. I have my own website, patrickfillion.com. We can be found at classcomics.com, and people can find me on Patreon if they're interested, because I've already started Gay for Slay number 4. And the first few pages have already trickled onto my Patreon page. So my patrons get to see all Isaiah stuff ahead of everybody else. And so I'm at patreon.com/PatrickFillion. And are we missing anything?
No, probably there's so much out there, but you go to
Social
one and then you'll
media.
find it elsewhere.
Well, Patrick and Fraser, I really want to thank you for stopping by. Wyatt, I mean, you guys are two of my favorite people, and it's good to see your faces.
Well, we've had a blast.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much. It's always so much fun to see you. And what people might not know is during our first podcast, I could see you and you could see me, but we were only recording sound. So I got to see your smiling face, and you got to, totally lead me into and just calm my nerves and everything. So it's wonderful people can see that now, because I think that it's really a great way to connect. So thank you again.
Thank you, gentlemen. So there you have it. You can find the official Wyatt podcast page on WyattEvans.com, which is the go-to destination for LGBTQ plus news, features, commentary, and entertainment. WyattEvans.com is visited by more than 100 countries on the regular. Yes. WyattEvans.com is where you'll find my smoking hot, Nothing Can Tear Us Apart series of novels, and the latest installment is entitled Frenzy! I said Frenzy. And Frenzy, y'all, is chock full of masculine romance, passion, danger, action, intrigue, and all of that in 2 or 3, 4, 5 bags of chips. Now, its predecessor is Rage, all at WyattEvans.com. And the sequel in the Nothing Can Tear Us Apart series of novels is called Delirium. I said Delirium. And that's gonna drop in a few months. Stay tuned. And if you want to contact me, your host, Wyatt O'Brien Evans, drop me a line at WyattOnAir@gmail.com. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and you see all of my stuff, all of my social media stuff right there in front of your face. So, until next time, y'all, woof, goddammit, woof, 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 woof.